in the dark, I play my dreams. Permaculture flows like sweet streams. I'm the daddy with the know-how seed. Creating the world like it's meant to be. Permaculture, P-I-M-P, I'm the king. That's it up in everything. Bring a change, making it last. Join the permaculture.
Welcome to episode 393 of the Permaculture Pimpcast, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. The only pimpcast on planet Earth where we discuss permaculture, preparedness, practical living.
Permaculture, P-I-M-P, with soulful rays. In a VIP dance where we find our place.
Oh, good to be here, everybody. Well, as you can see, we're not in the usual platforms, and maybe we'll discuss that in a little bit. But this episode, as always, brought to you by Hickory Ridge Soap from TwoOldCrowsHomestead.com.
Turn that simp into a pimp.
Bam! As your standard. Yeah, folks, you're going to want to check them out because they got a deal. If you're not currently with them, you're going to want to get in there. The deal is for, let's see here, 15% off. And you got to put in Food for Health 15, all one word. Food for not the number 4, as we have in the title here. Food for Health 15 for new customers, and you got to buy over $100. So I don't know how you don't buy over $100 at Azure. I mean, honestly, with the stuff they have there. So, yeah, this is going to be a different one tonight, y'all. Before we get to our guest here, Beau, I want to remind you, coming up October 27th through the 31st, that, well, I'll be reminding you a lot between now and then, because that's obviously October next year. TPC is going to get you 5% off the Sovereign Health Summit. And, man, we're even going to have Barbara O'Neill there. She's going to be our headliner. How about that? So, yeah, go check it out. TPC will get you 5% off. Now, we're also going to be doing, in addition to the in-person tickets, we also have live stream tickets. So you can go over there and get whatever works out well for you. Folks, in this new year, you are going to have to, and I'm talking in a big way, you're going to have to be thinking about ways in which you inoculate yourself from all the nonsense that's going on out there. And then finally, before we go to the guest here, EMF rocks 10% off with promo code PERMA. Look, y'all, I keep this thing on me at all times. It's on my hip right next to my whip, if you know what I mean. And these rocks, they rock. And, you know, it's basic. Well, I had Dr. Franson on. Just check that video out. Was able to do it on YouTube. And, of course, every single time we go live on YouTube, they usually unsubscribe at least 30 to 50 people every single time. So now we're doing this exclusively on the other platforms. So if you're here, wonderful. If not, I'm sure you'll know about it. Well, with that said, we're going to go to our guest here, my man, Beau. How you doing there? Uh-oh. Yeah, bro, it sounds like we're talking to an alien. I don't know what's up with your signal there.
Transformer.
Yeah. Do you read me? All right. I'm not catching you, Beau. All right. Well, Beau, I'll tell you what. We'll have you drop off and then drop back on and see if we get a better connection that way. Why don't we go ahead and do that? And we'll just talk until you get back. So that said, it looks like we got a little connection error with my man Beau, because folks, he's doing things in another place that is, to be honest with you, I mean, he's doing the very same things we've talked about, but he's doing it in his own way. We'll see if we can get back to him here in a minute. Okay, I guess he's muted on his end, or I can't find him. I'm not sure which. Okay, here we go. All right, Beau, is that any better?
I don't know. You tell me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're still coming in a little bit distorted, the sound anyway. I can barely hear you. It's better, but it's still not wonderful.
Okay, let me hop off.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you said, but I heard hop off, so I guess he's going to jump off and come back on. Anyway, Yeah,
Hey,
folks,
Dad, real,
yeah, go
real
ahead.
quick on the note about the Sovereign Health Summit. Hey, y'all, for those of you guys that are wanting to volunteer at the Sovereign Health Summit, don't email me because I don't have any of that information. So be sure to go to the website and then use the proper channels that way. I'm not in charge of the volunteers. I just know that a bunch of people have like emailed me and asked me about volunteering and everything. I don't have any of the information. And I'm not also not the one giving like marching orders or anything like that for the volunteers. So go to the website and then just follow the links that way to get the information for that. Yeah, I've had a couple people. I was going through emails earlier today, and I had a couple people asking me about how to go about volunteering or what they need to do. They've signed up for volunteering and trying to figure out what they want to do, stuff like that. So,
Well, we'll see what we can do at the website. We'll be talking to T and Amber tomorrow, and we'll see exactly where we are on that whole thing. But yeah, folks, this thing is really. I just listened to an interview with Seth Holhouse and regarding this whole 6G that Trump just kind of put out there the other day. Yeah, we're ready for 6G, folks. If you understood the unmitigated damage that 5G, and then I'm listening to an interview with Dr. Brian Artis, who we've had on this show, got us canceled for a little while, but yeah, we a recent interview with Dr. Artis, him talking about the very same day Trump signed Operation Warp Speed. This is strangely first time I'd ever heard of it. At the very same time, he signed this other thing, putting up all these 5G towers. So, yeah, how about that? So anyway, want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat right now. Like I said, I'm not expecting because we just simply can't do it on a regular channel anymore, folks. It's gotten that bad. It's, everybody was like, oh, Trump's saying everything's going to improve. Well, folks, I'm here to tell you that the very opposite has happened. It's gotten 10 times worse in all these platforms. And then they dangle, they want you to believe that, what's that one that Elon Musk has? X. Yeah, they want you to think X is wonderful. And folks, I'm here to tell you, they banned me right off the bat. I mean, as soon as I put Dr. Will on there talking about what was happening at the river, can't go live over there, can't do anything. So the walls are coming in. But we're gonna fight right down to the very last opportunity to, folks, because we live in a crazy world, and it's only going to get worse.
and I actually have proof of that, Dad. So the last strike that I got on my channel was from the podcast, and it was talking about a certain fruit's seeds and its potential possibilities of there's potential possibilities. So as punishment, YouTube said, and they've throttled my channel way down. They've said that you have to take this this course. Basically, it's like 7 questions, and it's basically like a punishment class to make sure I understand what the community guidelines are. So some of the questions I took screenshots of because, okay, here's one question that we took a screenshot of. It was Talia upload, and you have to tell the answer is either yes, it's a violation, or no, it isn't a violation. But this is proof that they're watching the channel and keeping track of what we're saying. Talia uploads a video where she demonstrates how to make Miracle Mineral Supplement. MMS is a form of industrial bleach. Talia recommends that her viewers drink MMS daily as a way to cure autism, cancer, HIV, AIDS, hepatitis, the flu, and other conditions. Is this a violation? Yes or no? Obviously, their answer is no, or yes, this is a violation, but every single question was like skewed towards exact things that we have talked about.
Yeah, well, it's a mess. It is a real mess, and hopefully the signal is a little bit better here with Beau. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me okay now, y'all?
Oh, yeah, that's a whole lot better. All right.
Good deal. Sorry about that, man. Rural internet,
Hey, bro, I
Trying to
know
get
exactly
my-
what you're talking about. If we didn't have, I mean, there is no way if we didn't have fiber out here, which is strange because we live in the boonies. They got fiber, but there's a reason for all that stuff, and I'll probably cover that in later episodes. But anyway, Beau, man, I'm a big fan of you, man. And folks, if you don't know, he's got, well, I'm sure he'll tell us about where we can find all the other places he is, but I found him just kind of, I don't spend a whole lot of time on X these days once I found out this thing ain't the free speech platform they claim it is. And I'm going through there and I'm seeing this guy doing some pretty awesome stuff. And I go to his channel and I'm like, okay, I got to follow him. And B, I go looking down there and I'm like, man, we're doing a lot of the same stuff. And in fact, you've kind of invented your own way of doing things. So before we get into some of that, Beau, why don't you give everybody, to what extent you're able or you're willing to, maybe a little background on yourself.
So I'm in Middle Georgia, and golly, I'll try not to ramble, which I'm bad about doing. But my food sovereignty journey probably started 15 to 17 years ago. My son was a little boy, and I grew up on a farm. Grew up, my dad, I say a farm, it was probably more like a big homestead, small farm. Daddy always had a few pigs. He always had a few steers. We had chickens, and they always planted a big garden, and did what most people do. I rode bulls for 7 years, so I was kind of traveling around trying to make it as a bull rider, but I wasn't very good. So yeah, I finally came to that realization, I'm never going to make it doing this. So I came back home, and got married, had a kid, and we were doing the neighborhood thing, and I was still raising pigs over at my mama's and daddy's place. And golly, there was one Saturday morning, my son was crawling around on the ground by his playset, and he picked up a bug, and it was dead, but he put it in his mouth, and it was like a light bulb moment happened, right? Like, what am I doing? I'm paying these people, and I'm paying these people to spray my yard with pesticides and herbicides and fertilizers, and like the bugs were dead, and my son put it in his mouth. Like, what is it doing to him, right? So it was very early in those days. The very early YouTube, was just getting going, and I started doing some research on YouTube, and I found this guy named Howard Garrett. He was a professor at Texas A&M University, and he was doing, as far as I know, probably one of the earliest uh, YouTube, organic type things. And I started following him, and I actually learned about organic ways to control weeds and things like that, and compost extracts. Actually, he taught us how to make this thing called Garrett juice, which was basically compost tea with some molasses in it, some apple cider vinegar, a few other things. But I started making the Garrett juice, man. I was going to because I had pigs, but I didn't have cows or whatever at that point at my parents' place. So I was going to a horse boarding facility at the time, and I was getting horse manure and hay, and I was making compost out of that. And then I had these big 250-gallon IBC tanks, and I was making my Garrett juice in those. And I had no idea at that point what permaculture was. Hell, I barely knew what organic was. Rural Middle Georgia, man. Wasn't any Whole Foods or anything out there. We were buying groceries at the Piggly Wiggly. But I had always been into plants. I call myself a plant geek, and I always had this fascination with tropicals. So I had planted, I had started what we would now call a tropical or a subtropical food forest. But again, at that point in time, I didn't know what permaculture was. I didn't know what a food forest was. But I had things like different gingers planted. I had some cold hardy citrus planted. I had some palm trees. There's actually it's native to South America, but it grows really well in the southeast. It's called the Butea capitata. Been grown for a long time in the southeast. They call it the southern jelly palm, and it's got these orange fruits. I don't know if y'all are familiar with what the southern jelly palm is, but it's got these orange seeds, these orange fruits that people made wines and jellies out of. So I had some of those growing. Doing kumquats. I was doing a loquats and just anything. I was pushing that zone as far as I could push it, and really just kind of evolved. And then I found you guys 4 or 5 years ago, and I started watching y'all. I learned how to make compost the right way. We ended up buying a farm, so I was able to bring in more livestock. I had pigs already, so moved them over. But then I got some cows. I've evolved into sheep now. So right now I'm running. I've got chickens, pigs, sheep, and cattle on my farm. But I've modeled a lot of what I do after things I've learned from you guys. Going down to the food bank, getting spoilage, going to bakeries and delis and getting scraps like that. My biggest thing is I made like this solemn vow to myself a couple of years ago that I was going to get off buying feed, and everything I do now revolves around being able to raise my animals without buying feed and buying hay. So,
That's what
and
I'm
that's a
talking.
lot of what I post about on Twitter.
Yeah, man. I tell you what, folks, you have got to check him out over there. It's Homesteading for Sovereignty. And that was, I'll be honest with you, Beau, that was one of the biggest draws. I'm like, hold on. He's doing one of our biggest frustrations is that we do this, and we make these videos, and there's a lot of people that like it, but very few, I would say probably less than 1% of 1% actually do anything with it. But then when I come across you and I'm like, hold on, not only are you doing what we did, you've gone past it and you've invented your own way of doing things, which is absolutely fantastic. But before we come into that, I want to, one of the big things here on this show is, man, as you well know, we're all about, trying to live free. And so when I saw Homesteading for Sovereignty, ding, 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 I mean, they jumped off in my mind. So I'm just wondering, in your case and where you're located, what does sovereignty actually mean to you? And, how did you arrive at that definition?
So a little story about the Homesteading for Sovereignty, and I'm sure you guys will understand where I'm coming from with this. So this is my third account on Twitter.
Oh,
Yeah. So every time I get suspended or shadow banned, I just make a new account. Like I'm gonna beat them at their own game. They want to play that way, let's play. So when I first got on Twitter, I don't know, man, probably 5 years ago. I got on there really for political stuff, and to be able to keep up with, because I knew a lot of like my Congress people, my senators. I knew they posted on Twitter a lot, and I had pretty much gotten off Facebook again for being suspended so many times. Like I wanted some way to keep track of them, so I actually opened that Twitter, my first Twitter account originally, to be able to keep up with political stuff. And I discovered spaces. And so I started going in a lot of the political spaces and got in with like a really good group of folks, a really tight knit little community. And, but they didn't know anything about growing food, right? And, I talked with a couple of them, kind of, back channeled with them. I'm like, there's a lot of people on Twitter who say a lot of things, but if I'm being realistic, I don't see a lot of people actually doing anything to fix the problems that they spend hours a day complaining about. In my mind, the way we win and the way we take back our country is, first of all, we can't be dependent upon the supply chain, right? He who controls the food controls the people. So if we rely on the government or the supply chain, whoever in the heck they are, if we're supplying on them to feed our families and to give us our medicine, so we're not sick, then we can never ever be truly sovereign, right? We've got to take control of our food and health sovereignty. And so we actually started talking about, well, let's start doing spaces specifically about growing your own food. So we started doing a space twice a week called Homesteading for Sovereignty, and we've been doing them now. going on 4 years. And we do them twice a week. The days kind of changed. I think after the first of the year, we're going to start doing them on Tuesdays Tuesdays and Fridays at like 1 o'clock. And then we built they call them communities on Twitter, but we started a Homesteading for Sovereignty community. And Billy, I don't know if you noticed this, but I don't have a blue check. Because I don't try to sell any of the products I produce on Twitter. And I always tell people, because I want to be very clear about my intentions. Like I feel like my calling is to help people take their food and health sovereignty back. And I don't want anyone to call me a grifter. I don't want anyone to say, I'm all I do is fake. It's just to sell my products. I don't even talk about anything I sell or do on there other than my goal is to help people learn how to grow their own food, whether they live in an apartment and they're just trying to grow stuff in some pots on a balcony. I talk to people about learning how to forage, because that's one thing. And you guys, in permaculture, humans love to create work for ourselves, right? I always tell people, before you ever plant the first tree or get the first animal, like get a native plant book and walk around whatever natural areas you have, whether they be parks or just a country road, and learn every single plant that's growing around you, right? Because so many of them have nutritional and medicinal value. Learn how to identify them. Because if things get really bad, that's knowledge we're going to need to know, and that's knowledge that we knew 7,500 years ago. What I always tell people is, one old person ago, we knew how to forage for food and medicine, and we knew how to process animals and preserve meat without refrigeration. And hell, pardon my language, but most of these people wouldn't know how to eat if they couldn't go through the drive-through at McDonald's to get it. You know what I mean? Right. So we're trying to educate people on that, but learn how to identify, how to pick, process, and preserve those medicines that we have. And then, start, even if it's just growing some tomatoes in a pot, man, like start learning how to garden, start saving seeds, right? Because that kind of thing is going to pay dividend down the roads, particularly when it comes time that people are going to need those things.
I think it's paying. Hey, son, if you want to, just jump in whenever. But I think it's paying dividends right now. I'll be honest with you, Beau. I'm sitting here kind of doing the math. I knew you were going to be on, and I was really looking forward to it. And I'm like, let me just kind of take stock here of what things cost in the store. For the most part, we really, especially with as local as I try to eat these days, pretty much everything I'm eating came from right here. Outside of toilet paper and aluminum foil, I don't really need to go to the store for much. So I sat here, I said, you know what, I wonder, because we had to go to Whole Foods for something or another. I hate going in that place, but we had to. And anyway, Michelle goes in there, she's looking around, and while she's doing her thing, I go over to the meat counter, and I'm just kind of poking around and just seeing what they're charging. A king's ransom for lamb that was grown halfway across the world. And I'm like, okay, man, I got 8 freezers plumb full. I got so much food here because the methods we use and that you use produce so much abundance that we have to give away. We had to give away all the meat birds we raised. We had to give away 3 pigs and I'm still eating some of them that are a couple of years old right now. So yeah. I'm sitting here doing it. So you're saying it's paying dividends on down the line, but I 100% I agree. But also say that, you know what, in this area where, supposedly we ain't got no inflation, I think everybody knows different. But, and of course they ain't counting food and fuel in that equation. But I'm sitting here at a time where people are, through these holidays or whatever, maybe they're flipping a coin as to whether or not they're going to eat or whether or not they take medication that they supposedly need. I ain't doing none of those things. I ain't saying that to brag, but I'm saying because this inflation in those areas really don't affect my life one bit.
Billy,
Hey,
I went to the grocery store. I made chili last week. Okay, and I have been like contemplating doing this experiment. I have a hard time buying things from the store when I have it, at home that I grew. But finally, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. So I bought the hamburger meat, I bought the dry beans, I bought the tomato sauce, the diced tomatoes, and I bought everything organic, right? And I bought and I love Will Harris at White Oak Pastures.
Oh
So
yeah.
the store that I bought this stuff from sells his hamburger meat. So I bought the high end, as clean as you can get at the grocery store, organic stuff. But I don't know about y'all, but growing up, man, like chili's what you fed families with on a budget, right? It was
Right.
cheap. $112, man.
What?
$112. How in the heck are young families and working middle class people, how are they affording things right now? It's ridiculous, man. And again, I'm gonna watch my language here, but like you always say, don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining. When they get up there on TV, our elected officials, and they both do it. Oh, it's the best economy in the history of the country. And like, dude, we all go to the store. Like, we know how much things cost. It's ridiculous. People have got to get back to growing their own food again. I there's a really good documentary that I watched a few years ago, and this kind of thing, this has stuck with me, and I may not get the numbers exactly right, but there are 33,000 edible plants on this planet. Now, that doesn't mean like 10 different kinds of green beans all included in that. They're saying like 10 green beans, right? Squash, different plants, and then the different cultivators, you can multiply that or extrapolate that out. But there are 33,000 plants, and 90% of the plant-based calories that humans consume only come from 110 different species. Okay? That's insane if you think about it. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, son, I believe you had something for him.
yeah. Hey, Beau, when you were rebuilding your homesteading, when you were getting back into doing the homesteading thing, what were some mistakes that you made that you could warn the viewers or the audience about?
Man, you preach it almost every episode, right? Like when you get into I went too fast, right? I tried to do too much too fast. I didn't plan properly, okay? And I think that's a trap that most of us fall in. But getting more specifically into like the principles of permaculture, you're supposed to observe, right? You're supposed to watch how the sun hits things from different times of the day, different months of the year, how water flows, and it's going to flow differently in summer versus winter, right? At least in the southeast, and I think everywhere's got like a wet season, but you know, if it's been dry in July and hadn't rained in 4 weeks, and the ground and the red Georgia clays like asphalt, water wants to run away. Versus in the winter, things might be a little more soft and able to absorb rainfall. But there's I can't remember who I heard say this, but um, it's not about how much rain you get; it's about how much you can keep, right? And that is that changes your mindset when you think about it that way. But yeah, to
Well,
answer your question, William, I didn't plan properly. I attacked it. That's how I tend to do things, and I had to redo a lot of things because I tried to go too fast.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I'm right. I totally get it, man. It's ready, fire, aim. But I'm glad they're hearing it from your perspective as well. I want to get into some of what you're doing because I'll be honest with you. The first video I saw of yours, you had a you had a trailer plumb full. I think it was pumpkins you had in the back of there. What are some of the methods that you're using? I've talked about it before. In fact, I probably ought to do a webinar because there ain't no way on earth YouTube's going to let me get away with talking about some of the places where I know folks can get food and all. So I can't necessarily do it in a open platform. It's going to have to be behind a paywall for some of these things I do. But I'm wondering, A, what are some of these places where you're getting your stuff? And B, how are you approaching? Because one of the big things that people write back to me, and it pisses me off every time they say it, well, I don't know what you're doing, but nobody's giving me any food, or I tried and blah, 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 blah. I get all the excuses why somebody can't do something, but I see you down there redefining what I thought I knew. So, Beau, what do you think about some of that? And what are some of the tips that you would offer?
Well, so I don't take no for an answer very well when I'm determined to do something. So, part of this is probably my own hard headedness and stubbornness. But, the first thing I started doing was I started going to grocery stores, right? And I was asking produce departments for any spoilages they had. If they had a bakery, any breads, things like that. And I ran into a lot of dead ends with grocery stores. And I completely understand that from a liability standpoint. Somebody, they could end up in lawsuits over something like that. But I ended up going to the food bank. And I'm pretty fortunate that I live in an area that close to me, there's a pretty good sized food bank, and they get lots of things from lots of different grocery stores in the area. The University of Georgia, they get a lot of things from their cafeteria. They get a lot of things from Costco's and Sam's and stuff like that. So I was fortunate the second or third time I called food bank after being told, that, hey, we do that, but we have two or three farmers that are already coming to get it. And it just took me catching the right guy on the right day. And he said, I got a pallet of stuff in here now. And I did not have my trailer with me. I had my pickup truck and I was throwing boxes of stuff in the back. And I said, when can I come back to get more? And, I ended up able to develop a relationship with him, and he texts me. But on average, I would say from my food bank, I get 2 to 4 pallets a week. It just depends. Very few weeks do I not get at least 2 pallets of something. Sometimes it's bags, like bags of pre-cut lettuces or whatever. But I've gotten to know him so well now, and we've become pretty good friends. He tends to give those to other people, but he'll let me get bags. I mean, big pallets of pumpkins, squashes, boxes of squashes, zucchinis, tomatoes, apples, bananas, pears, good whole food type things. And I get, like I said, 2 to 4 pallets a week. I went today and I got a pallet of potatoes and a pallet of spaghetti squash.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Man.
So what role, I guess that counts as part of your community, but what role does community play in your homestead or anything like that? Like, are you in a position where you have to produce everything you guys want to eat, or is there like neighbors that you can kind of barter with, or any sense of community, homesteading community at all?
Again, I am pretty fortunate that I live in a pretty rural agriculture kind of centric area, kind of central East Georgia. Um, I'm pretty fortunate that there are a lot of I guess you'd call them like produce stands. I mean, just in my county alone, um, well, and y'all may be familiar with the road because I think it goes up your way. It's a U.S. Route 441.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so if you drive up and down 441 from one end to the other, I think it goes from like Miami to Michigan. But you get up into Georgia, there's lots of like peach orchards and I mean there's produce stands all over it. So I try to do, a lot like y'all do. I try to eat things that are in season and that I can buy. I try to grow a good garden myself, but this year with just some other things going on, my garden really suffered. So I've been able to rely on, my neighbors, right? And then another thing that a trend that's really picking up that I'm happy to see is a lot of people are doing these little farm stands, right? Like these honor system food stands in my community, in my county. And so just within a few miles of me, there's 3 of them. And they, like this time of year, they're doing lettuces and carrots and collards and cabbage and stuff like that. So, I can always pick up stuff like that way. Now, what I do personally is I'm trying to do more protein based stuff. And in the future, I'm transitioning a lot to, and this is one of the reasons why I didn't do much of a garden this year, because I'm trying to phase out annual production crops, right? And I'm trying to do more perennial food systems. Like over the last couple of years, I mean, I've got this one garden spot, y'all, that I put wood chips and I've sprayed with compost extracts for like 5 years. And I actually, on my main account on Twitter a couple of years ago, I posted a video. I took a 5 gallon bucket with water and I poured it out in this spot. And every bit of that water percolated down through the soil. I took it 20 feet away where I hadn't done anything, right? It was still Georgia red clay. And I poured that same bucket out and it all ran downhill. But man, I've really like thrown everything I could at building the soil in this spot. And I grew my garden there for 3 or 4 years. But I've planted mulberries. I think I have a couple of fig trees in there. I planted some pear. I've got and I'm not sure if y'all have ever heard of this, but it's called pineapple guava. The Australians or the New Zealanders call it Vajoya, I believe. But I planted some Vajoya in there. I've got a couple of peach trees in there, and then obviously I've done my guilds, right? Because I learned from you guys. I've got blueberries in there. I got blackberries. I got raspberries. I planted some muscadines. I planted some scuppernongs. And then I got my strawberries as my and comfrey and a few other things as my ground covers. I've got a lot of herbs in there too, a lot of like creeping thyme and stuff like that.
Bo, do you
But
have
my
any?
goal in the future, to answer your question again, I'm sorry guys, I ramble,
You're good.
but I want to do that same honor system type setup, and I would like to sell, because that's something that's missing in my community. There's not a lot of uh, perennial food crops like apples, like fresh grown. I hate the word organic because, I don't like calling anything I do something that I have to pay the government to legally be able to call it. But I would say a permaculture based system, fruits and vegetables, perennial fruits and vegetables from a permaculture based system.
Jeff Lawton's loophole around organic was calling it ecosystemically grown.
There you
So
go.
there you go.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I ain't paying no extra money for. I don't want to give them a dime in the first place, much less pay extra money to sit here and have some classification. That really ain't worth two dead flies when you get down to brass tacks. Because if people knew what people were allowed to put on this stuff and still call it organic, they might rethink all that. But I want to ask you, with how you're going about this, are you? I understand you got a community out there on, in your spaces and your Facebook, but locally, how are people doing down there? I mean, you ain't that far from me, but I ain't sure I can get a real good feel for the bottom up here because we got so many weirdos up here near Asheville. I don't know what reality is anymore because whenever I interact with these people, I feel like I got to take a shower. So, and that's not all of them, but the overwhelming majority. But I'm wondering, I mean, with you down here, I think you can see the writing on the wall. I mean, clearly you call, your channel is Homesteading for Sovereignty. You stand for all this stuff, but man, I see everything falling apart right now in this country. At least it looks that way to me. Do you find yourself isolated down there? Are folks seeing it, or are they just still drinking the Kool-Aid?
Lots of drinking the Kool-Aid. Sorry. Lots of drinking the Kool-Aid, Billy. There are pockets, there are people that understand what's going on. I think, and I haven't done this yet, But one, I know before I got off Facebook, I was starting to get into a lot of like homesteading groups on Facebook. I think that would be a good place to maybe connect with like-minded people. Um, and that's one thing we talk about in the space all the time. Like, if you're looking for product, whatever it is, whether it be, clean pork chops or tomatoes, whatever it may be, you got to be careful going to farmers markets. And this may be an unpopular opinion or a hot take or whatever you want to call it. And I see it a lot with chickens. Okay. Um, you know, and part of this is education, right? So like, if you're growing Cornish cross chickens, right, as a producer, right, and even if you've got those things on like in chicken tractors, you got them out on grass and you're moving them every day. If you're giving them free choice bag feed, like, let's be realistic, because we all know like what Cornish crosses do. Now I think it may be different with egg layers to a certain degree, because they have more of that natural foraging instinct to go around and scratch and eat bugs and eat grass. But man, those Cornish crosses, if they can have free choice feed, they're going to sit there for 8 weeks and do nothing but drink water, poop, and eat that feed out of that feeder. So are you doing yourself any better paying $30 for a glyphosate laced soy and corn fed chicken from a farmer's market than you are just going and buying Tyson? Because sure, it's better, but I don't know that it's $25 better, right? And I don't think a lot of people realize that. That's one thing we talk about a lot is on the spaces, is that education piece. If and I guess that ties back into your question about community. And while it may not be local, I feel like it's kind of my calling to educate people. And what I always tell them is, when you go and you buy chicken from your local farmer, right? If you're buying it from a farmer's market, ask them, what are you feeding your chickens? And I educate them about what Cornish cross birds really are. Like, ask them what they're feeding them. Are they buying, glyphosate laced soy and corn meal chicken feed from a local mill, from Tractor Supply? Or are they getting soy free and maybe organic, corn based seed type feed that's out there? It's expensive, but it's out there. But at the end of the day, producers produce what consumers want to buy, right? If they put pressure on them, if they stop buying their product, they'll be forced to change. So, I try to connect, I guess, to answer your question, I try to connect as much as I can with local people, but I really try to educate people and give them the information they need to go find their producers in their community, so that they can educate them. Because I honestly believe a lot of this is, as sad as it is to say, because most farmers gain what they know from other farmers or the extension agents in their county, who are employees of the university system of that state. Where do the university systems get their funds to do the research, to come to the conclusions that they tell people? They get it from the government, who, where are they getting their money from? Big ag, right? Big chemical. And a lot of times these research universities are getting their research funds from those same companies, right? They're getting it from Bayer, they're getting it from AstraZeneca, they're getting it from Cargill. That's where the money comes to do the research. So, we're teaching our farmers wrong because it's tainted money.
Couldn't agree more, son.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people who are listening who are in the process of looking for land. If you had to do it over again, what are some things that you would be looking for in a particular piece of land that you wish you had on your property, or that you do have on your property? Also, like, what size acreage would you say is the minimum to grow your own protein? Like a diverse protein, not just like pigeons on a balcony.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, water, access to water. I think that's the key to everything. I tell people all the time, everybody wants pasture land, but I think we're really missing the mark because a lot of times wooded overgrown properties are a lot cheaper than pasture than acreage that is flat and has beautiful grass over it. And both of them, probably require pretty equal amounts of work to get them, into a regenerative type system. I love wooded properties. If you know the plants that are growing there, like on my farm, about half of it was pasture, about half of it was wooded. Okay, and in the beginning, I put my cows out on my pasture. I ran my pigs in the woods. But I've actually, and we'll get into this hopefully because it's something I'm pretty excited about. But one thing I did is I started moving my cows into the woods more, right? So I would go through and I would evaluate what I have a half acre at a time, right? Like what types of trees are growing. I bought a sawmill so that I could cut down the big pines and process those into lumber that I could build infrastructure out of. Um, and then, because I've learned, about all the native plants, like, I can tell the difference between a white oak, a hickory, a sweet gum, so I started figuring out what trees produce food for me or my animals, right? So I want to leave those high quality white oaks. I want to leave those hickories. I want to keep the native mulberries that I have on my property. I have a lot of muscadines, so obviously they want to creep along the ground and in the woods, but if you go start opening up that canopy and grazing animals, you can start running those muscadines up those trees, right? So they're dropping muscadines. I'm very fortunate that I've got a lot of native blueberries on my property. So learning how to identify those, what trees are good fodder, right? So things like mulberries. Talking about mulberries, the protein content in mulberry leaves is excellent for fodder for livestock. um uh Willow trees, I've got a lot of in the low lying areas. I got a lot of willow trees growing on my property, so with those I do more. I don't want to eliminate them. I want to pollard them so that I can come through a couple of times this summer and start chopping down the regrowth and letting my cows and my sheep come graze those leaves. I have found that they really really like uh, poplar. And I got to be careful because I know different parts of the country call different species poplar, but I'm talking about tulip poplar. Okay. They have the leaves that look like teacups, right? Like little poplars. They're really good fodder for cattle and sheep. So, evaluating what can I let grow and mature, what can I remove so that I can get sunlight down on the forest floor? And then what can I keep for fodder trees? That's how I evaluate it. And then I put a plan into action. I run the pigs through it, let them clean it up. Then I might run my sheep and my cows through next to let them, get the stuff 2, 3, 4 feet up in the air, and they'll like prune everything up, right? And then I can get in there and walk around and I can start dropping, some of the less desirable trees.
Man, I know we got you jumping all over the place, but William's got a set of questions. I got some on my end here, but you're doing a great job. I do want to ask you because I know when we talked previous to this, I mean, we didn't get into any preparedness kind of stuff, but I feel like it's kind of just judging by what I hear you say and what I see you post, seems like it's baked in the cake. So I'm wondering, how prepared do you think the average rural homesteader actually is? I mean, and I'm saying this with, well, I'm not going to poison the well. I'll just go ahead and ask it that way, because it seems most people they go out there, they go to Tractor Supply for everything they need, or they go to whatever local place it is. Well, just like you said, I mean, I had thought this whole thing would fall apart long before now. And so we were gearing up for it years ago with the expectation that, hey, we ain't going to have the benefit of going to town and do this, that, and this. We better find some ways off the beaten path, and how you're using tree hay is exactly how we use it as well. You know, I'm just wondering from your perspective, if things were to jump off tomorrow, because this ain't like it was, and you kind of alluded to it in the beginning of it, this ain't like it was during the Great Depression where 90% lived rurally, 10% lived in the city. Those numbers are now swapped. And a lot of the folks living in the country now, there's a whole lot of city slickers that really don't know their way around if there wasn't no Tractor Supply on the corner.
That's right.
So if it were to jump off tomorrow, man, how prepared do you think that the average homesteader actually is?
Very unprepared, unfortunately. And you know, again, that's one of the things that I try to help people kind of understand. You know, cheese wasn't made back in the day because people like cheese, right? Cheese was a way to preserve fresh milk, right? By the way, you will never hear me say the words raw milk, except in the rare exception that I'm about to give this description. I hate that term. Milk is not supposed to be cooked, so it's never really raw. It's in its natural state. The crap we buy at the grocery store, man, that's cooked milk. Okay, if we're gonna call anything, if we're gonna give anything a distinction, we should give the pasteurized and homogenized milk at the grocery store a name and call it cooked milk. But I call it fresh milk. So you know, cheese was a way to preserve fresh milk, right? Hams, you know, people didn't make hams because they just loved ham. You know, ham was a way to preserve that pork, right? They rubbed it down with salt, they covered it in butcher paper, and they let it sit in the shed for 2 months. And that ham will keep with nothing else. Like that's all you need to do is rub it with salt and a little bit of pepper to keep the bugs off of it. Wrap it in butcher paper and let it sit out of the, you know, in a cool, dark room, and it'll keep for years that way. Bacon, you know, smoking meats. Like, you know, my granddaddy had a smokehouse, you know, and I think most patriarchs in the family back in the day had smokehouses. You know, bacon was a way to preserve meat. They smoked it, right? That was how they could keep bacon without refrigeration. You got to remember, you know, in the rural South, as recently as 75 years ago, most people didn't have electricity, right? So if they didn't have electricity, they didn't have refrigerators, you know? So these are all ways that people preserved food for hard times, you know, without modern technology. And, you know, like I always joke around, one old person ago, you know, we've lost all this knowledge in one old person.
Man, I couldn't have said that better myself. Good night. I just feel that, you know, Joel Salatin, you know, Joel's a friend of mine, so I just think he got this one wrong, where he talked about a homesteading tsunami. Well, for the most part, a lot of homesteading, I think, has become something of a fad. And you see people jumping out right now as fast as they got in. And William and I predicted it. I mean, that's one thing I got right for 2025. I said, as soon as Trump got in, you're going to see all those same people, because we've been seeing it for his whole life.
Yeah.
Every time a Republican's in there, people go right back into the matrix. And then when the Democrats in there, they come right back out. And all the preparedness groups we ran in, and all the homesteading groups. And you see that very thing unfolding right now. So I think these folks that think there's a dime's worth of difference between any of the two, I wonder if they ain't about to have a real come to Jesus meeting, because things are getting real. And I don't know if it's going to jump off tomorrow or the next day. And I'm not saying folks ought to live in fear, but Beau, you're pointing out some pretty incredible things, the things that we have been telling. I'm glad you pointed out the thing with the ham. Those country hams that everybody spends. I mean, man, I don't even know what they spend. We don't even know what the real shelf life is on a properly made country ham. And I'm talking, folks, like he said, you know, wrapping it with salt. Sometimes that's all there was, maybe a little bit of pepper, put it in butcher paper, and then some people hang it in the sock. There's hams that are 200 years old up in Virginia right now that are still good. So we don't even know what the shelf life is on this stuff. And, you know, I'd love to taste that 200-year-old ham, man. That'd be like eating an egg from a dinosaur, I guess. But Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that Dave Chappelle scene. Son.
Yeah. Yeah, sprinkle some diamonds on it, make my dookie twinkle.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards. But
Nope.
guess we lost Beau. Well, I guess we got a little bit too much into preparedness. Maybe he'll come back. Well, son, what did I tell you? I told you, man. He's definitely got his stuff together.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I wonder, like one thing that a lot of people struggle with is thinking that they need to do all of this all at once. So I'm wondering, the next question I was going to ask him was, how long did it take him to transition into producing all of his own feed for his animals? And then another thing I was thinking about asking him too, staying on the preparedness side, aspect, was like, what are some items that he thinks people might be overlooking as far as what they need to prepare? And then what are some skills that he thinks that people need to prepare? You know, food preservation being obviously one of them. But yeah, no, he's squared away. That's awesome. That's awesome.
And I was hoping we'd get a little bit more into it. We're coming to the shady end of this show anyway, but we'll have to have Beau back on. But man, the thing that was blowing me away is that how well it's done on Twitter and how he's pointing out. I mean, we didn't even get into the grazing and stuff, man. He's doing high density grazing. He's doing it all right there. And he's doing this managing and juggling a whole lot of balls. So all the folks out there that are saying, well, I don't think I got time for this. I don't see anybody busier than him. I mean, my man's running at 100 miles an hour and he's still making it happen and doing it with the expectation that things are in a shady place right now in this country. So, I mean, he got my complete attention, son. I kid you not, man. Had a whole flat trailer filled up with pallets of, you know, pumpkins and stuff like that. And I was talking about, look, man, if you live near an orchard or something like that, go out there, you know, bring the neighbor's kids or something like I did back in the day. Go fill up the back of your truck with apples or whatever's in season at one of these orchards, because they can't, once they hit the ground, y'all, they can't legally sell them. Go out there, be a blessing to them, clean them apples up, take them home, feed them to your omnivores. I mean, even your sheep will eat them. I mean,
or you might be, if you're lacking land, if you don't have land, then you might be able to like work with one of these orchards and say, hey, I'll manage the lanes between the trees. Like, I don't have land, but I want to raise sheep, or I don't have land and I want to raise chickens and sheep, something like that. Would it be possible to team up with you guys? You guys get a percentage of the lamb that I produce, and I can run my lambs in between the rows of your orchard, and then that's something else that the orchard can advertise. It's like an ecosystemically, stealing that word from Jeff Lawton, an ecosystemically grown orchard where they no longer have to fertilize, because you're bringing your sheep in. They no longer have to mow, so that's less maintenance that they have to do. That grass is getting converted into protein, so now they're getting the added protein, and they don't even have to manage it because you're looking for a place to run animals anyway. Yeah,
they may be a little bit touch and go on some of that, because obviously those sheep are going to eat some of those leaves. But I tell you, one animal that would work is pigs. If you have pigs running out there with ringed noses, they're not going to dig anything up. You know,
or just get a pig that does a little bit better on pasture. Like, you could do some coonies or American guinea hogs or something like
they'd
that.
probably go nuts. I mean, on some of those apples or whatever. But there are options out there. And what I love about Beau is that he's on Twitter all the time. Y'all go check him out for real. Homesteading for the number 4 sovereignty. And he is such a joy with all the garbage that you see on these platforms. And like Beau, I go in there for very, very precise and specific reasons. Look, y'all, I'm not a guy you're going to catch texting all day long. In fact, I have this more of a hate relationship with these phones and all these other things. But the point being is that, you know, I'm sitting here coming across some of his content at least every day. And I'm like, man, it's a breath of fresh air. I go looking for it, to be honest with you. It's a breath of fresh air to see a guy out here that's really, really doing some big stuff. And I thought people really ought to know what he's doing out there, because I'm telling you what, he has some really good content, really good point of view. And I guarantee if we had him on, he'd probably still be blowing everybody's minds. All right, son, anything else to add?
Real quick, Denise just posted his Twitter in the chat. It looks like his new handle on there is Sovereignty Ranch. So SOVERN letter T Ranch. So if you're looking for him, that might be how you find him.
I think he's got a couple of handles, man. When I spoke to him on the phone, the first time there, the first time he was on, yeah, I guess he just texted me. He said his phone's dead, but it's all good. Okay, I guess, well, maybe we got him back. So the first time I spoke to him on there, I was so doggone impressed. When you hear about the full extent of what he's doing, I'm not sure how much he's willing to share with an audience like this, or whether he is, or, I'm not sure what he's willing to share. But honestly, every time you see his content, man, you're like, okay, this is somebody I definitely resonate with. So I sent him a private message, man. I never do that sort of thing. And I said, hey, would you like to be on the show? And next thing you know, I remember being up in Tennessee somewhere, give him a call, and I was like, oh my goodness, man, we have got to set it up. So we've been trying to set this up for quite a while, but he is doing big things. So let's see if we can get him back in here. Well, it looks like, I think his signal's touch and go. So, well,
We can have him back on.
yeah, we'll just have to have him back on. Make sure he's got a good signal, and because I still got a bunch more things. We didn't even get into half of what he's doing out there. He is doing some pretty astonishing things, and it's such a joy to know that we helped inspire some of what he's doing. But you can tell by this. You can tell by just talking to him that he ain't the guy he ain't one to be put off. You ain't gonna stop him. I mean, he's one of those guys that's gonna go after it with everything he has. So it was a real joy to have him on this show. I want to thank everybody in the chat. I neglected to tell everybody in the usual place that, hey, we're going to be on here tonight. So unfortunately, I didn't get that out in time. That's the problem when you're juggling too many doggone balls. All right, well, that's going to do it for us. I want to thank everybody for being here. Till next time, stay alert.
Stay alive.
Nature, the knowledge ring, with roots that run deep, wisdom from soul, burn across your dreams, let the ideas unfold. I'm grooving with the truth, feeling nature's groove. Who's got the answers? All we need to do, listen to the earth, they got us through. Let's see the shame. Watch the world spin from the smallest sprout to harmony begin in the cycle of life where the magic's alive. Tune it to the beat, feel the vibe and thrive. Cultivating truth.